everyone, and welcome to HCMI Connects. My name is Huizin, and I'll be your host today. It has been more than a year since Malaysia implemented the first national lockdown or movement control order back in March 2020 because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Businesses have yet to recover from the financial impact brought by the first MCO. Subsequently, the country was hit by the second and third prolonged MCO. Thousands of businesses are struggling to survive, while some have resorted to salary reduction to sustain their business. Some have no choice but to close down their business and retrench the employees in order to survive this winter. And this will be the focus of our discussion today. Let's welcome our guest today. We have Mr. Thomas Chow, our industrial relations expert, and Mr. Vaslav Koranda, the Vice President of Human Resources at T-Systems Malaysia. Welcome, Thomas and Vaslav.
Hello.
With the increasing number of cases day by day, it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, or when exactly will this pandemic come to an end. Thomas, is the pandemic a good justification for organizations to retrench employees?
Thank you, Huizin. I wouldn't use the pandemic as a reason for separation, but the pandemic certainly has affected the business, and the environment is actually pretty grim to a lot of companies. So therefore, it is the pandemic that affected the business, and the business consequently had a severe impact on its revenue and bottom line, and a lot of companies are getting into the red, and cash flow was a major problem. So therefore, organization arising from this drop in the revenue and the cash flow would actually have the justification to look at the reorganizing the employees in line with the business volume they're going to get. So pandemic is the catalyst rather than the main reason. Right? So it is proper to use that business as the reason to justify any redundancy, rather than put the blame on the pandemic squarely. But the pandemic certainly has a huge impact on the bottom line and revenue of companies.
Right. Do you think that has actually lead to more employee separation cases nowadays?
Definitely. Definitely, it has impacted a lot of companies that resulted in a number of measures they took, aside from retrenchment. A lot of companies, particularly in the hotel industry, you see many of them have closed down. 3-star, 4 stars have closed down. Some are struggling to continue. A lot of manufacturing companies have also closed down. So in those cases, it's not a case of retrenchment alone, it's a case of complete closure. So everybody go. So it has a huge impact. Of course, we have not get the real statistics in the news as to how many people have employment have ended by virtue of this current situation, economic situation. But the number could be huge. If you look at the hundreds of hotel closed, so to speak, that we read from the news, and the F&P, as well as the small businesses, etc. Some century-old shops have closed down by virtue of this inability to cope with the economic crisis arising from the pandemic.
Right. So if, Thomas, again, the question is for you. If, let's say, an organization has exhausted all options to maintain or sustain their business and retain their employees and have no choice but to carry out a retrenchment, what are some of the key things that they must consider?
Thank you for the question. When the company has come to the point that it has to move forward, they have to reduce and restructure the company. Retrenchment, obviously, or surplus employees, obviously, is one of the areas they need to look at it very seriously. And in particular, that they have to, the proverbial saying is that you got to cut the cloth according to the size. And a lot of them definitely have overbloated number of employees based on the current business volume. So aside from it, the retrenchment, they have to look at a lot of other measures like cost cutting, which they probably have already started. And by virtue of working from home, there's a lot of cost saving, but that may not be good enough. So eventually they would actually have to separate employees by retrenchment or other means that that they will need to move forward in order to sustain whatever number they have for the business to stay afloat for a while until the pandemic is over.
And Václav, in your experience, what were your key considerations when you were planning for employee situation?
Our situation was a bit different. We did not have to retrench people because of the pandemic, but because of the overall company strategy. Basically, it was decided to wind up the legal entity here, so more or less everyone has to leave the company. I think the biggest consideration for us was actually how to combine the different point of views, the operational point of view, and then the IR point of view, because we could not basically let everyone go on the same day. It had to be staggered in a certain way because, you know, the company is structured in let's say many teams that perform specialized functions, and every team you have to keep a minimum size in order for them to be operational. Mostly they are working in shifts or whenever they are doing something, usually we apply the 4 eyes principle to prevent any errors and stuff like that. So you have to have a certain minimum size to be able to staff the shifts and to follow all these rules. And then you have the IR regulations, which say last in, first out, and all this. So that was quite a bit of a havoc for us to put this together and do it in the right form, I would say. Other than that, I think the biggest consideration for us was the communication. Communication with the employees seemed to be the key in order to be able to proceed with this, situation properly. And then whatever happens, it has to be, properly communicated, explained the reasons why we're doing it, what is going to happen and when, and so on, and to be fully transparent about it towards the employees. That was our another key consideration in this.
Right. So I think the key message that I get from both your sharing is really to achieve a balance between the operations versus, having to relook into how many employees are redundant and still yet maintaining the operations running at the same time. And I like the point where Václav, you mentioned that, the key thing is actually to be transparent with the employees. So Václav, again, how can the employer then create a better support system to help these employees through this journey affected by the separation exercises?
Well, I think, if you look at it from the legal perspective, you have the employment law, and then you have the Code of Industrial Harmony, right? And then they have different prescriptions, and there are certain legal obligations what you are supposed to give to the employees once they have to leave the company. But I don't think it's sufficient, and we actually went way beyond that. And one thing we provided is financial support, and I think that's key because it will take some time for everyone to find a new job, and people have obligations and they have to pay their costs and maintain their cash flow the same way as the businesses do actually in this pandemic. So that was, I think, a key element. But regardless how big package you give to the people, it will run out one day. So the other key element was we called a career transition program or outplacement programs. And I think it helped the people a lot. And I'm actually getting very good feedback from many of them. And I think many of them have already found new jobs. So I think it's working very well. And then what we are also doing is we are reaching out to other companies, let's say our former competitors, even in the same industry, and we are trying to find who is hiring and what are the jobs the people can apply to, and we are actively sharing it with our current and former employees so that they can actually find new jobs faster.
Thomas, do you have anything else to add on?
Yeah, I think one important key area for a company that actually closes down, there is very little choice. Everybody go, whether one go or progressively over a phase period. For a company that are having redundant employees and under closing, the focus should not only be on people who are redundant, the focus should also be on people who are remaining. See how they exit the redundant employees will have a huge impact on the remaining employees. And in my opinion, it is equally critical for them to look at both the redundant employees, how to provide assistance to them and the support system to support them while they're looking for alternative employment, like what Mr. Waslav said just now. But they also must take care at the same time, whatever they do, the actions they take or the approach they take on the redundant employees, whether by separation or by retrenchment, it will have a huge impact on the remaining employees. And to me, it is even more critical because post-exercise, they have to depend on these remaining employees to drive the business. So a lot of time I find companies actually focus on how to take off the numbers and not focusing on the people who actually to carry on with the business. I mean, in my opinion, taking off the number of people they need to, there are compliances and it can be done. But once it impacts the remaining employees who find that the organization is defaulted in their opinions, it's going to be a struggle for the company to gel them together post-exercise and to try to meet the company objectives that is already on a much reduced scale. So it has to look at both approach rather than just only the redundant employees.
Right, interesting. So it's really you have to employees will have to take care of the employees, either they are going leaving the company soon or especially those who are going to be remaining, because they're going to be the main person who will be delivering the business result at the end of the day.
That is correct. And to me, it's also very key consideration while they do any reorganization exercise that result in separation of employees.
Okay, I think we can all agree that retrenchment should be the last resort when it comes to reevaluating business sustainability, because it is equally hard for both the employee and employers if companies must resort to employee separation. So as our discussion comes to an end, Thomas, what would be the one key takeaway for organizations that are considering carrying out employee separation exercise?
Over my years of handling redundancy, retrenchment, separations, one key thing that I find it successful is that employer must always put themselves in the shoes of the employees, whether they are going to be redundant or whether they're going to be to remain to carry out the business. They have to think how the employees will face with retrenchment or face with the business that continue on a smaller scale, not sure about the future in the company. And this is key consideration. So it's not just the business objectives of shedding so many employees, resulting in a cost saving of how many millions. They have to look at the perspective of the employees as well in order to carry out amicable and successful separation of employees that will help to drive the business after the exercise. So it's a balance of between the company objectives as well as employees' expectations and aspirations. And once the employees find that there's empathy, that there's a consideration and transparencies, achieving separation of employees, whether by retrenchment or by voluntary separation or mutual separation, can be successfully carried out. And what is important is don't do something that will tarnish the business, that will jeopardize the business, just for the sake of saving some money without going in a proper way. And that is a fair and justified way.
That's very important. Vaslav, how about you? What would be the one key takeaway for employers who are considering employee separation?
I would really like to highlight the importance of clear, open and honest communication with the employees. I think that's what we try to focus on the whole time, and I think that was key element that helped us actually to maintain the industrial harmony throughout the whole exercise. If you look at the number of people we had to let go, it was, I think, close to 900, but until now we have only got 3 claims. And I think it was really the communication that helped us a lot to basically explain the reasons, what we are doing, why we are doing it, and what are going to be the terms and conditions for the employees. So as Thomas highlighted, the company should actually put themselves into the employees' shoes in order to be able to understand what they are going through and basically help them to go through this whole exercise. But also, I think it works the other way around. If you put actually the employees into your shoes, then they will better understand the reasons why the company is doing it, and they will be more willing to accept that it has to happen.
Right, right. So it's really the transparency in communication, as well as to be empathetic to the employee's situation.
Yes, yes, and basically, I always try to take away this like sort of disasters element of the whole exercise. You know, people think it's the world is going to end, or you know, so I always try to like defuse sort of the situation in that sense. Like I was always highlighting the benefits we are giving to the people. Like focus on the silver lining. That's what I would advise.
Right, right. Thank you so much, Thomas and Basla, for your sharing, and we really appreciate your time here. And I personally learned more about how companies can manage employee separation and what are the key factors to consider if companies must embark on this journey. With that, we conclude today's discussion. We hope you have picked up a thing or two from this video as well. Feel free to reach out to us through the website or email stated below if you want to have a conversation about employee separation. Thank you, take care, and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.